All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the Eagles and their road to the Super Bowl, how they got here. So, unlike the Chiefs, the Eagles, it took a little bit for them to kind of find themselves. Now, the Chiefs, they were trying to do that, but they were winning games. The Eagles did start off the year 2-2. And they started off the year in Brazil that Friday night against the Packers, and that was kind of a messy game. There were turnovers. There was really no defense in the game. The offense were both offenses were moving the ball up and down the field. But this is when Saquon Barkley, put everybody on notice, like, hey, I'm gonna have a big year, because he had 3 touchdowns in the game, and yeah, I mean already he was making his mark as an Eagle. And the Eagles did pick up the win. That was the game Jordan Love got hurt in, so we were kind of concerned with that. But of course, Jordan Love did come back. I mean, he did deal with injuries throughout the whole year, but it didn't look good when that injury initially happened. But he ended up coming back. But yeah, it was not a great game for the Eagles though, collectively. And I've said this. It took the defense some time to gel, which it eventually did in a big way. But yeah, not a great game to start off. And then it didn't get any better. Well, they won the game, but then they ended up losing that loss. They ended up losing that game against the Falcons. They lose 22-21. Barkley drops that first down pass from Hurts, and then Kirk Cousins and the Falcons go down the field. They scored. They end up winning the game 22-21. And things just didn't look good after that. And then they go up to New Orleans, and you had people very concerned going into that game because the Saints started off the year 2-0, and they were playing really good football. They put up 40 points back-to-back weeks, and the Eagles were banged up. A.J. Brown was hurt. Devontae Smith, I think, got hurt in this game. So it's just there were concerns. It wasn't looking good, and the Eagles did put up a lot of yards in this game, but they didn't turn anything into points. They were going for it on fourth down. Actually, what did they end up finishing on fourth down in this game? So their fourth down efficiency, they went 1 for 3. So yeah, I mean, I don't know why I thought it was more, but they put up 460 yards of total offense to the Saints 219. Like, if they would have cashed in, they could have blew the Saints out, but they didn't. So this was a pretty close game throughout. The Eagles did not have a single point until the fourth quarter. It was 3-0 Saints going into the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden, you had Saquon Barkley take it to the house. He ended up breaking off a 65-yard run, scoring the touchdown, making it 7-3. Then the Saints scored a field goal after that. The Eagles missed a field goal. Saints got a touchdown to make it 12-7. And then you had Dallas Goedert on 3rd and 16 picking up the first down and then some. A 61-yard reception. And then that led to another Barkley touchdown. Derek Carr ended up throwing a pick, and the Eagles picked up the win there. And that was a game that, people started saying, okay, maybe, things are starting to turn around now. They put that loss to the Falcons behind them, and they're ready to move forward. But then they played against the Buccaneers, and it was kind of more of the same from the playoff game last year. Baker Mayfield and that offense had their way against Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. Baker put up 347 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. The Bucs ran the ball for over 100 yards. Mike Evans had a touchdown in the game. And, the Eagles were missing their top 2 guys. No Devontae Smith, no A.J. Brown. Saquon Barkley only had 84 yards on the ground, and a big chunk of it came on a 59-yard run at one point. But, yeah, it wasn't looking good for the Eagles at 2-2. And the bye week came at the right time. So then when they came out of the bye, they proceeded to win 10 straight games. And the only game that they ended up losing from that point on, it was the Commanders game. And that was the game that Jalen Hurts suffered a concussion. They ended up losing at the very end when Jane Daniels threw the touchdown to Jamison Crowder to put them ahead. So the Eagles then, but other than that, the Eagles dominated the rest of the season. Against the Browns, though, however, they only won 20-16, so I still wasn't totally sold yet on the Eagles. Then Saquon Barkley makes his return to MetLife Stadium, and he had a big day, rushing for 176 yards and a touchdown. Not really surprised by that. The Eagles continue their dominance against the Giants. They beat up on the Bengals in Cincy 37-17. Barkley had that signature play, that backwards hurdle against Jacksonville the following week. Although that game was closer than it should have been. Jacksonville had some opportunities there to win the game, but they didn't. Eagles won that. And then the Eagles beat up on Dallas. They beat Washington on that Thursday night. Saquon had a couple of big runs in that game, a couple of touchdowns. Then they beat up on the... See, this is when you started to say, you know what, the Eagles, they're legit, because they beat the Commanders, then they beat the Rams in LA. They won 37-20, and then they beat the Ravens on the road 24-19, which I thought was very impressive. And that really showed you that, hey, this defense is legit, because they gave Lamar Jackson a tough time. Derrick Henry didn't have a big day, and they were down early in that game, but they came back and they won that game. And like I said, that put us on notice. Like, all right, this Eagles team is starting to round into form. They won a close game against the Panthers, who started to play better, 22-16. They won by a couple of scores against the Steelers. Like I said, they lost that game to the Commanders. Jalen Hurts got hurt in the game. But then, you had Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee starting the final two games. Well, Kenny Pickett actually got hurt, so Tanner McKee started the final two games. They beat up on Dallas again, 41-7, and then they beat the Giants 20-13. And then Hurts came back. They beat the Packers 22-10. Their defense shut down that Packers offense. The Packers offense really couldn't get anything going other than Josh Jacobs being able to run the football a little bit. The Rams, Saquon Barkley had a big day. They won that game 28-22. Got dicey at the end. The Rams had the opportunity to win the game, but Jalen Carter had the sack on Stafford at the end on that 3rd and 2. They were able to win that. Rams didn't convert on the 4th down, and then they just beat up on the Commanders, 55-23. Commanders, turned the ball over a bunch of times. Saquon Barkley, set the tone with that touchdown run to open up the game. Hurts had a good day, and the Eagles once again back in the Super Bowl. And in the beginning of the year, there was definitely some finger pointing. Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, that relationship's not working. It's a problem. But you know what? They were able to figure it out. And they're back in the Super Bowl once again. Give them a lot of credit. And this team that they have right now is probably better than the team that they had previously when they got to the Super Bowl. And I think they have a great chance to win this game on Sunday. It's going to be tough because, they're going up against a team that has been there and done that so many times. But they have that experience. They got to this point a couple of years ago, and they've definitely thought about this, for a while, and they want to redeem themselves. And they have a great chance to do that on Sunday. But they showed you, though, throughout the year, they overcame that slow start. The defense really started to play together and gel. And, Jalen Hurts, he didn't put up big stats. 2,900 passing yards, 18 touchdowns to 5 picks. Had 14 rushing touchdowns, but a lot of them was on the due to the credit of the tush push. Saquon Barkley had over 2,000 yards rushing, 13 rushing touchdowns on the year. A.J. Brown, still with the time that he missed, still had over 1,000 yards. He had 7 touchdowns. Devontae Smith had 8. Dallas Goedert had a couple of touchdowns. Saquon had 2 receiving touchdowns on the season. But this team's really good. And you look at some of the defensive stats. Jalen Carter had 4.5 sacks on the season, 2 forced fumbles. Josh Sweat, 8 sacks on the season. Nolan Smith, 6.5 sacks on the season. These are the guys that are going to have to get to Mahomes. Are they going to be able to do that? And I like I said to open up the show, they're going to win their battles, and I think they will put some pressure on Mahomes in this game. They'll be able to get after him at times. But yeah, give the Eagles credit. It was a rough ending to their season in 2023, but they look like the team that we saw a couple years ago make it all the way to the Super Bowl. And they're looking to knock off the Chiefs and get it done this time around. And we'll see if they're able to do it. We'll see if they're able to do it. But let me know what you guys think about the Eagles season. It was an impressive year for them, and we got one game left. So let's see what happens this time around. So we are going to take our next break, and then when we come back, we will continue to talk about the Super Bowl. Who will win Super Bowl MVP? We will get into that conversation. Who has the best chance of doing so? I mean, based off of, my prediction early on in the show, you kind of know where I'd probably end up leaning towards when it comes to that. But we'll take a look at, who are the favorites to win. What could be, some underrated picks for Super Bowl MVP. We'll get into all that when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.